So this week what we want to do is I want to talk about the status of morality. Now we've talked about ethics for 4 weeks. Well, not really, because I noticed that Aristotle presented us with the good life, and he called it, anybody remember what he called it, the good life? Moral virtue, not ethical virtue. And then Kant, right after that, this was your last week, introduced us to his way of the good life, and he called it, anybody remember? Duty. Moral duty, not ethical duty. Now, did they make a mistake? Is there any difference between morality and ethics? Are they interchangeable? Can we just substitute one for another? Or did they get it right and we just don't understand what they were told? Why would one be moral? So I have a professor friend here, and he really thought it was ethical. And when I pointed out that the two ancients didn't see it that way, he said, well, I guess I have to think about it now. So I want us to think about it. This is our discussion time. Every time we get together, we'll have a little discussion time. So to start it off, what is ethics? For 4 weeks, we've talked about ethics. Ethics equals the law. The law needs a value. No lying, stealing, cheating, raping, and robbing, red light, green light. The law needs a value. And the value is designed to establish the maximum amount of freedom in what we call our social contract. Again, if you live alone, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want to do. No one cares. Give yourself a black eye. It's up to you. But when two or more of us together, we need some kind of agreement. That agreement is based on rules. We encode those rules in law, so we all know what the rules are. And we call that the ethical life. What is ethics? Go ahead.
Law.
It's the law. Part of it is the law. Okay. That's a good answer. What else is ethics? The good way to live, the prescribed way to live. Okay, go ahead. Honesty. No lying, stealing, cheating, honesty, sure. What else is ethics?
The reasoning behind law.
The reasoning behind the law. Remember, we started with moral reasoning. We said everybody has a capacity to reason, but moral reasoning takes situations that require a moral concept. But we're talking about ethics, not morality here. Ethics requires reasoning. What laws are good laws? What laws may not be good laws? What else is ethics? What else is ethics? Set of rules to govern behavior, right? Remember, we started with human behavior. It has a motive, has an action, has a consequence. We call that ethics, the study of human behavior. And out of that, then, we drew what makes the good life. What kind of behavior makes the good life? Well, utilitarianism says the greatest happiness for the greatest number. So we have laws that try and enhance happiness for the greatest number, minimum wage. But we also found out for every theory there's an upside, there's a downside too. So utilitarianism can give rise to slavery, can give rise to genocide, can give rise to a lot of social situations that are acceptable to the majority and ethically they just don't seem right. Or maybe morally they don't seem right. What's the difference between ethics and morality? So what else is ethics, people? Reasoning's part of it. We have to sit down and reason together. Have any of you ever seen how they do law? You can tune in sometime. It's usually on C-SPAN on TV. It's real boring. I was up in Tallahassee. I had to go there as part of some program that the school offered, and I just happened to have to go in the legislature that weekend I was there. And in the legislature, they were discussing a decision that the Supreme Court made that prohibited Florida from executing anybody else until certain standards were met. And I thought, that's interesting. And so the problem with Florida is there's a law, there's an amendment in the Constitution that says you have a right to a trial by your jury, and that jury then decides what the sentence of your crime should be. That's the law. Ethics equals the law. And so this representative got up and made public comments. You know, they record everything like we're recording. And he says, well, obviously the Supreme Court doesn't know how we do things down here in Florida. And then he went on to explain. He says, in Florida, when you have a capital crime, a murder trial, if 9 people out of 12 on the jury think that the crime is so egregious it deserves, is so bad, that's what egregious means, that it deserves the death penalty, they recommend the death penalty to the judge and they leave it up to the judge. Well, that violates the Constitution. You have a right to a trial by your peers, and they decide what your punishment is. No more judges, no more kings, Caesars, pharaohs, emperors, dictators. That's divine right of kings. We left that alone in 1215. We left the Magna Carta. And so he said, I'll tell you what, let's just change the law and make it 10 people in the jury. If they recommend the death penalty to the judge, then the judge is free to recommend the death. So right now, we're not going to execute anybody. We have over 400 people on death row, and they're safe from execution because evidently the politicians in Florida haven't figured out yet that Supreme Court law supersedes state law. You have to do things according to the law. If you don't do things according to the law, even politicians, the freedom to do what they want to do is limited. And ethics equals the law. You can't have people going out on their own doing what they think is right. That's why we have a framework. It's called a Constitution. Go ahead.
Wouldn't ethics be stricter than morality?
The question is, or the answer is, wouldn't ethics strictly be morality? Maybe. Is there a difference between, would Aristotle have been right calling ethical virtue and Kant right calling it ethical duty? They certainly knew ethics was involved. Why did they choose morality as opposed to ethics? That's a good question. What is the difference between the two? Go ahead, dear.
Morality is more of your own personal set of beliefs. Like, ethically, it's not right to lie. But like you said before, if I had a basement full of Jews during the Holocaust, I would lie. And it's like even though ethically I shouldn't be lying about that.
Okay, so that answer, I like that answer. That answer is then, therefore, morality is maybe ethics internally. It's personal, how we view it. How many would agree with that? So then, if the ethical principle is wrong and you internalize that, does that make your morality just as wrong? Why not? It's just ethics internalized. If I understand right. There's nothing wrong with what you said. I just want to make sure I understand it right.
I think that morality or moral reasoning is yourself, and ethics is everything. So it might be wrong to lie, but if it's in the right circumstance and yourself, you can lie because it's your reasoning and that's how you rose to believe.
Okay, so let's hang on. Let's take that a little bit and then therefore say that in that particular case, morality would be above the law since ethics equals the law, and I disagree with the law, with the ethics of the law, so I put my personal opinion above the law?
Well,
Don't back down. Defend it. Henry David Thoreau did that. He said slavery was wrong. I don't care what the government endorses. He chose not to pay taxes, and he was put in jail.
if your moral reasoning is different from what the law says, like in slavery, then you act on it, and you don't have to abide by the law because it's morally right to yourself.
And so how does that wash, what's your first name?
Aaron.
Karen?
Aaron.
Aaron, with Aaron's comment that morality is really ethics internalized if now you're above the law. They're both good thoughts. I just want you to flush them out a little bit.
It's the same thing, but